Hey everybody, welcome to Good News in Parks. It's your show designed especially for the park and rec industry and its supporters to bring us together to interact, ask questions, share thoughts, and recognize everything you do to inspire healthy, equitable communities. I'm Anne Marie Spencer, and together with my rock star co-host, we are excited to have you here for what promises to be a very enthusiastic show. Just a quick reminder or two. First of all, we invite you to interact with us and with our panel in a variety of ways. So first of all, you'll notice that Q&A icon at the bottom of the Zoom window. Please click it and submit your questions to our panel as you think of them throughout the show, and we'll be answering them. We're going to have 3 polls for you today as well, and we love your participation in those. It's really important to Jody and I because your input fuels all of our future show content. So to that end, we'll also send out a survey after the show. It is not very long, so we would encourage you to take that, and we use that feedback also to help shape future episodes so that we remain relevant and up to the minute and meaningful across our diverse audience. And finally, thank you all for the great feedback you've sent about the show. We love that it's connecting so many people in the field to discuss and share ideas. So let's grow the network. If you like the show, we would love it if you would share it with your team, grow the movement, and pass along all the good news in parks. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jody Adams to introduce our panel today and get the ball rolling with some national news.
And we do have some national news through these panelists. We're going to set it on fire today. Holly Ballard, the director of Columbus, Georgia, Parks and Recreation Department. She is the current chair of the National Association of County Park and Recreation Officials. She is also the current president of Georgia Parks and Recreation Association. She is a certified Parks and Recreation professional, along with numerous, let me tell you, the list is long, of numerous professional national certifications. Holly, I think you've already made us tired. But welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jody. Thanks so much. Appreciate that.
Can't wait to hear from you. Scott Martin, Director, Chattanooga, Tennessee, Parks and Outdoor Department. He is the North American Co-Chair and Executive Board Member for World Urban Parks. He is a fellow member of the American Academy of Parks and Recreation Administration, and he has also served other organizations and communities like the River Heritage Conservative, also Franklin County, Virginia, Boise, Idaho, and Parkland of Fork, Louisville, Kentucky. Say all that really quick. Scott, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks. So glad to be here.
Dr. Tiffany Johnson, Park and Recreation Manager, City of Topeka, Washington,
Tukwila. Parks and
Recreation. Thank you. I need a little help there. That was a tricky one for me.
Tequila, not tequila.
Right. She is past president of the National Recreation and Park Ethnic Minority Society. She is also recipient of the NRPA Robert W. Crawford Youth Professional Award and the American Academy of Parks and Recreation Ernest T. Atwell Professional Diversity Extern Program recipient. Wow. She is also currently on the 2022 NRPA Conference Program Committee that will be hosted in the fall. And welcome to the show, Dr. Tiffany Johnson.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, and Michelle Wells, we're going to come back to you, the Executive Director of North Carolina Recreation and Park Association. Michelle, thank you for joining us. Can't wait to hear more.
Thank you. It's great to be here today.
All right, good news, national news. Let me jump into this. Well, we know this is a month of celebration of movements. So we got the National Water Safety Month. We've got the National Mental Health Awareness Month, and we have the National Tennis Month of letsplaytennis.com. So stay tuned for those and join the movements because these all affect our field. The other thing is hot off the press, the NRPA Park Plus report is just come out about first aid and other safety certifications offered with departments internally and externally. So grab that at nrpa.org. Also, Trust for Public Lands just came out with the 2022 National Park Score rankings of the nation for the 100 largest cities. Make sure and look that up. Washington, D.C., number one again. So that is assessment of accessibility to parks, acreage, investment, amenities, and equity within parks for tpl.org. So definitely look that up, and pretty amazing information. I was reading it all yesterday. All right, let's lead into our panelists that we wanted to add new today. Holly, you are the head right now of the board of directors for the National Association of County Parks and Recreation Officials. What is kind of the goal of this organization, but where are you going, and anything you want to, share with our audience how to get involved?
Sure. Thanks, Jody. Sometimes you have to go back to come forward. So I'm going to take everybody back for a second. So our organization started in 1964. For those who are familiar, we actually started out as a section in NACO. And so basically the idea was to create a section or a framework within NACO for the county park and recreation administrators. So that's kind of our history of where we began. But basically it was to establish an opportunity for us to meet periodically, hold discussions, exchange ideas, many of the same things that we do every day with other professionals, and also to solicit support for programs that are vital to our profession, but on a county level, maybe not a city or other areas. So NACPRO is made up of county, regional, and special park district directors and senior staff from all across the U.S. Again, we started in 64, bringing us full forward to where we are today. We currently have 239 professionals, 2 retirees, 123 agencies across 33 states, and 28 of our agencies are CAPRA accredited. Our greatest strength basically is that we're a peer-to-peer network that we can facilitate with one another. And also we have a great opportunity to influence legislative agendas in both NACO and NRPA. We consider legislative concerns on a county, regional, special park districts, kind of to make sure that interests are represented through our lobbying strength, again, through NRPA and NACO. But it's a way for our members, for people to stay engaged, stay informed with news, research, technical reports. We also provide training opportunities and job openings through our newsletter that we send out every week. Fast forward again, super excited that Georgia is going to be hosting our NACPRO meeting this year. So our annual meeting is May 14th through the 16th in Valdosta, Georgia. That's going to include a county park tour. So we take a day wherever we meet each year, and we do a county tour of all of their various facilities and opportunities. That's also when we have our annual board membership meeting. We have a wonderful awards banquet. Super excited on those counties. Can't release that yet, but the counties that will get their awards this year, super excited. But annually we see over 100 nominations for the awards that we give out. So it's a great number of opportunities for counties around the country. And then of course we finish with a classroom workshop, making sure our folks get their CEUs. But again, would encourage anybody who is in a county, regional, or special park district, certainly check us out. We have a lot to offer, and certainly want to be there for those agencies.
Well, we'll try to put that contact in there for NACPRO.org. And
Yes.
just again, anyone that wants to join in, I used to be on the board of the directors on this organization. It's fantastic, especially for intergovernmental agencies and metro systems. So thank you so much, Holly, for being here, but sharing that information. Scott, you're co-chair, North America, not just, Tennessee or anything, North America. You are the co-chair with World Urban Parks, been around it. I've been involved with it. Share with us kind of the goal of World Urban Parks of the International Association and how to get involved. Oh, you're on mute.
I win. I was first on mute. Yes. Yes.
It's all good.
The background on my engagement, I'll make it personal real quick, is I think we all fight at some point the propensity to end up as some sort of Ron Swanson-like character at midlife as Parks and Recs people. It's very easy to. My eye-opening experience was engagement through World Urban Parks because it was the classic lift your horizons. And what the organization is a group of folks around the globe in cities primarily who all acknowledge the same thing, which is by 2050, 7 or 8 out of 10 of us across the globe are going to live in cities. We also acknowledge the second part. Cities are fascinating because they are something that humans control. we actually can decide if cities are livable, delightful, nice, joyful places. You can't do that at the Grand Canyon. The Grand Canyon is what it is. Cities is where we have a lot of the control. So we're a group of colleagues around the globe who engage regularly through Zoom and everything else. And we learn and discover, encourage, provoke one another to think big and learn from each other, and realize that our customers and our guests, whether they live in Monterey, Sydney, Tokyo, Chattanooga, they're human beings. They have the same wants, the same demands, the same expectations. And so it's a group of park leaders around the globe who are committed to sharing and learning together. With that said, there's an annual conference each year. It comes back this year. I'll put it in the chat if I think about it. It's going to be in Monterrey, Mexico this year from November 14th through 18th. And if you've ever wanted a really inexpensive way, and it's really inexpensive because the exchange rate in Mexico being what it is, to engage with your colleagues from around the globe and to learn how much you have in common with them, it's a great opportunity to do that. And I can tell you, just in my role here in Chattanooga, an American city of 200,000 folks, I've learned and I get as much out of my engagement with my colleagues in Adelaide, Australia as anywhere else. So it's a neat way to be a force multiplier globally as we are serving a global community. And in your community, I bet you have international businesses and international travelers and international residents. And it's just a way to shortcut that whole thing.
Well, you're right, Scott, getting involved with that. If you have sister cities, any of those type of connections, this all evolves into the development that you can use locally. It's been amazing. Thank you. And again, we'll try to give that information of where to go to get involved with World Urban Parks. Tiffany, you're past president. You're one of the past presidents of the NRP EMS. Sorry, this is a long one today for me. But you've got a special event coming up, but tell us about EMS and tell us about what's coming up for that group.
So the National Recreation and Park Ethnic Minority Society is an affiliate of NRPA that was started in the early 1970s. And it's a group of minority professionals from throughout the country that come together for the purposes of providing services to urban communities and communities of particularly of color, and to support professionals in our industry who are minorities. We do have a couple of things coming up at the NRPA conference in Phoenix. We always adopt the community center and do a community service project. So we'll do that on that Monday before the conference starts. We'll have a social that's actually sponsored by Playcore and Game Time. So thank you all for that. At the bowling alley, billiards and bowling. And then we'll have our annual luncheon where we recognize professionals from throughout the country that are doing amazing things in communities throughout the United States. And the thing that's most recently coming up is we've started fireside chats where we have conversations with other Parks and Recreation minorities in the profession who are in leadership positions. This first one is a fireside chat with Rosalind Johnson, who's the director of Baltimore County Parks and Recreation. She's also a member of the American Academy for Park and Recreation Professionals, which many of you are in, and Shonda Smith, who is the former director and now deputy county administrator for the city of Mobile, Alabama. Those are our first two speakers, and they're going to be talking about lessons in leadership and just sharing some advice to our membership or anybody that wants to just join and hear more about what the National Recreation and Park Ethnic Minority Society is, and just sharing leadership journeys. You know, none of us got to where we are alone. So information sharing is something that's extremely important. Another thing that I'm extremely excited about, and it was a baby for me, was creating a national mentoring program where you pair both either young professionals or new professionals with seasoned professionals. I don't like to say.
Thank you.
With seasoned professionals. And a longtime pioneer and amazing mentor of mine and many others, passed away a couple of years. So we renamed the mentoring program after him. So it's the Ernest Burkeen Mentoring Program. All of this information can be found on the website, www.nrpems.org. I can put that in the chat box too.
Actually, I've just put all three of your organizations in the chat box. Somebody asked if we could provide those websites, so we've got them in there for everyone.
All right, way to go. Way to be on top of it, everyone. Well, Tiffany, what's fantastic too, you've got a great lineup that you have all dedicated so many hours to on the program committee for NRPA. Thank you for doing that. Excited about NRPA, a lot of great sessions coming out. So again, folks, you are hearing from the best, you're hearing from national organizations, but let's get to our topic, intergenerational. So let's get into the best practices and programs and designs. All right, first questions, panelists, here we go. You all are extremely experienced professionals when it comes to the creation of park spaces and programs for intergenerational best design practices. Please share some key practices that our colleagues need to consider when creating that high quality intergenerational space or program for your community. Holly, let's start off with you.
Sure. So one of the things that we have started being way more intentional about here in Columbus is we're getting ready to do some renovations of some of our parks. These parks are pretty old parks here in our community. For us, that means 50 to 75 years old as parks go. So it gives us an opportunity to do some of that intergenerational. So when we've worked with our design team on how that would look going forward, it means making sure that the spaces are interconnected. So for example, if you're putting in a playground, you want to put in a walking space so that a grandparent or a caregiver can watch those children while they exercise. So we're doing two things at once. As you're integrating other aspects into the park, making sure whether it's fitness equipment that's inclusive for seniors and not just for children or not just for active adults, but that it involves everyone. And what does that placement look like as you're building out your parks? What other aspects can you add that bring out those individuals, older Americans, to have them engage and to be there in your parks? Is it park benches? Is it shaded spaces? You know, the list can go on and on. But I know for us, most recently, and as we move forward, trying to be just very intentional about how we look at our spaces, making sure that we're trying to have opportunities where there is that engagement, where there is that crossover in the basic day-to-day, if you will, activities that people participate in. And I know for us, when we've conducted focus group meetings and things of that nature, that actually came out as a want of the community. So we know it's there, we know how vital that is, and we know what the outcome of that can be. So for us, very simplistic, I know, very simple idea on our side. You know, as professions go, we all see that, we all understand that. But for us, it's going to be a game changer because of the age of our parks. And this is a new opportunity for us as we do go and make upgrades and renovations, that it will really give us more opportunities and ideas to be able to engage cross-generational.
You know, this is, well, that's why this is a subject, because we've had a lot of requests for this both in the programming area and infrastructure. But you know, I'll just give you another example, and you hit on it. People are looking at their parks and they're getting this intergenerational design. Example, you've got tennis over here, you've got play in the middle, and you got pickleball on the other side. You're seeing more and more of that development. Some of that development you're going to see at the national county meeting, and you'll see that in some of your touring. So thank you so much for that input. Scott, go ahead and chime in on this subject.
Yeah, I think, thank you. Not an expert by any stretch, but I think as most of us on this call know, we're celebrating the 200th birthday of Frederick Law Olmsted this year. And if you have not seen it in the last week, the New York Times just did a wonderful piece highlighting his work. And I think that speaks to intergenerational programming. And I've been reflecting a lot on Olmsted's work as well. If we think about his greatest landscapes that he gave us and the small d democratic public space that is a uniquely American expression that he gave us as well, most gloriously exemplified by Prospect Park in New York, Central Park in New York, the grounds of the US Capitol. Those at their core are based on intergenerational design principles. Now, he never would have used that term, but I think it behooves all of us as Parks and Rec professionals, when we think about this, to go back to the roots and go back to those designs that Frederick Olmsted taught us about the supremacy of circulation, the idea of moving people between spaces in various modes and manners, the idea of the great lawn, these timeless park elements that are not driven by a constituency group, but rather are driven by that idea that we shape cities through design. And if we get the design right, it can actually serve everyone. I reflected on that this last week because I spent a week in Big Bend National Park, and I watched group after group, van loads of naturalists. Now, they were baby boomers, very active seniors. But what they were exploring and using were those small D democratic spaces that we designed to have an experience that was different than the lycra-clad 2% body fat mountain biker who went racing by them. But they were using the exact same design. And it's up to us and our expertise in the field to do that. And the final comment I would share, and I've gone too long, and I just sent it to Anne Marie if she can share it. I heartily recommend spending a couple minutes with your team and watching this video by Gil Penalosan. I'm sure most of us on this call know Gil Penalosan and his work, but he's done some remarkable work thinking about seniors, the coming silver tsunami, and what that means in terms of our space on parks. And he does it far better than me with a perspective about how we serve them. So I encourage you to take a look at Gil's work and engage him, because he gets to that point, which is the last 40 years of your life now are counted as a senior. That ain't folded up and hang up the tent. If we're lucky, and most of us hopefully will be, the last 2 years our quality of life is going to be crap, but hopefully the 28 years before that are still pretty doggone good.
Absolutely.
That's what we lean into.
You know, Scott, I'm so glad you brought up our history and the movement and Olmsted movement. You're so right. And you know what? Let's learn from it. It's out there. I happened to be, when I was director of parks for Springfield, Greene County, we had Olmsted Park that we had actually designed, and it was intergenerational. So this is not new. We need to go back and review. And thank you so much for sharing these resources, because it's so important for us to call those up. Tiffany, join in.
Sure. So I'm coming probably more from a programmatic standpoint, but in the design phase here in the city of Tukwila, which is right outside of Seattle, is literally the neighboring city from Seattle. We're in the process, and this is my first project, in designing a teen and senior center. And so I think that it's extremely important that we engage community, that we meet people where they are. There are a number of barriers to access for people to kind of sometimes get to parks and recreation facilities. And so I think that it's important as professionals that we do listening sessions. You know, COVID taught us all how to pivot. We're all in different parts of the country right now, and we're on a call. And so using technology and just meeting people where they are, creating a number of different platforms is important. But I want to highlight a couple of intergenerational programs. In the last maybe 2 or 3 years, I've probably been in 3 departments: the city of Seattle, Prince William County, Virginia, and now the city of Tukwila. But when we think about intergenerational programming, we don't think about, sometimes we forget that our seniors do not want to be called seniors, because technically AARP considers 50-year-old seniors, and I hang out with 50-year-olds and they are not seniors. So I like to call them older active adults. Pickleball is a trend across the country. You have a lot of older active adults playing pickleball, but you have a lot of middle and young professionals that are also playing. When I think about the pandemic, you had a lot of older active adults facilitating story time to preschools and to students, because they were using this online platform. In the city of Seattle, we had a program called Cooking with Cops, where we brought cops together with students in grades 6 through 12 to create a meal once a month. Additionally, there's a late night program both in the city of Seattle and in the city of Tukwila, where police officers are active in keeping teenagers off of the streets. And so they meet on Fridays or Saturdays from 7 p.m. until midnight. And so let's not forget about the recreation piece. I know that planning and design is important, but so much is the recreation programming piece. And so those are things that I get really excited about, like just bringing people together. I think that the pandemic has helped us to learn different ways to do that. And the profession and the work that we do, if people didn't know that we were essential, now they do.
Tiffany, it is
You
so
know-
interesting what you said about AARP, because not only now are they no longer known as the American Association for Retired People, they only use the acronym, but they had a thing a few years ago where they launched this thing called Movies for Seniors, and people lost their minds. And they went through this whole exercise about, okay, why is this offensive? Why don't people like it? And they ended up naming it Movies for Grownups, because that was a little bit more okay.
Excellent.
So you're absolutely right about that.
Active seniors, you called it up. You nailed it, Tiffany. You're right. Well, right there, folks, you're hearing about not only reevaluating what your future is with capital development, you're listening to some of the best that know the history and the movement of design with intergenerational, and you're also hearing some of the best on intergenerational programming. Thanks, all three of you. All right, let's go to our first poll question, Anne Marie.
Absolutely. And I am absolutely loving this conversation. I think, you know, it's so interesting if you think about what has happened with COVID and sort of what was happening with people before, when there's all these reasons for intergenerational separation, right? Parents are having kids later in life. Young adults move to new cities to find work. There's that whole thing about social disengagement being considered sort of a part of aging, or older people moving to whole communities that are just of older people. So there's all these reasons why generations were kind of growing apart. And then all of a sudden COVID comes along, and it's almost like, I need to hang out with my family.
Exactly.
Like, it's not really safe to hang out with anybody else. And so now you have this movement of everybody. And oh, by the way, they're returning to the park because that's where we're all going. And so you're seeing this resurgence of that whole intergenerational movement. And it's just so exciting.
Well, Amber, you remember, I mean, we all lived this, like golf was dead. Like everyone buried golf 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it's back. Surprise, surprise.
that's
Yeah.
exactly right. And you're right.
Absolutely.
And that's happened with tennis and the pickleball movement.
Yeah.
Those
I was going to
two
say the same with
sports
that. It's like
are-
built-in social distancing, right?
Those two sports are on their highest growth patterns in the country. Those
Yeah.
two right now. And golf is right in there with them. So it's pretty amazing the evolution we're all in.
Absolutely. So let's take our first poll question, and we're going to ask our audience on this one. You know, there's a lot of different areas in your park where you can think about, and obviously we can't make change all at the same time everywhere. So if you were thinking about the areas where you would most want to increase intergenerational participation in your park, would it be just an overall attendance in the play and active areas, in garden and green spaces, along trails and walking paths, in the aquatics areas, the dog park, tennis and racket sports, within programming, or is it something else? And again, if it's something else, we fill out all the answers and we run out of space, so we can never pick all the answers. But if it's somewhere else that you're thinking about, put that in the chat, would you, so that we can share it with everybody, so we can share all the different areas where everybody's thinking about that. Everybody is still voting really crazily, so this is awesome. We'll give you a couple minutes to do that. And, you know, while we're doing that, I also think it's pretty important to note that, you know, a lot of people don't think about the differences between the terms multi-generational and intergenerational, where multi-generational just simply refers to a composition, right? As people from different generations are there. But intergenerational really thinks about that active exchange between generations and playing together and doing things together. And that's where there's this huge opportunity to enrich both people and the environment. So it's really exciting. Okay, the voting is slowing down. So we're going to end this in about 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. And let me share the results with you all. Well, there was a tie. Trails and walking paths and play and active areas were kind of the two main ones. And, you know, when I think about especially like play and active areas, just something as simple as thinking about an inclusive space where there's ramps and things like that. You know, if you're at the park with your grandson and maybe you're not super active or you know, able to move like you could when you were younger, and your grandson's like, hey, come up here and look at, you're probably not going to go up some crazy climber to get there, but if there's a ramp, you probably will, right? So just
Absolutely.
yeah, thinking about just the family access. Overall, intergenerational attendance was a very close third. And then, you know, several answers. Programming options was another one that was highly voted on. So lots of different areas around the park where people are doing that. So Jody, let's turn it back to you. And we'll have a couple more poll questions in just a minute.
Well, you know, also when we're talking about this goes into our question number 2. What qualifications are you looking for when it comes to hiring full-time staff or consultants to design intergenerational park spaces? And number 2, what qualifications are you looking for when you're hiring full-time staff to provide intergenerational programming? Because that's kind of a tricky question. That's why I'm posing it to you as top professionals. Scott, let's start with you.
I first look for someone that knows how to use the mute button. I find that to be a very,
You got this.
very important gift. I'm an old school dog, I guess, in this respect, in that I really want the generalist who leads with their hearts. We can teach the specific skills. I still believe that. But I believe parkies are kind of born. You know, just call me weird. I bet everyone on this call kind of knew this is where we were going to end up when we were probably 5 or 6 years old if we really drill down. So give me that person that brings a passion. I also want a person who is absolutely driven to connect people to experiences. A person who's not interested in metaphor. You want the person you go fishing with who doesn't care if they catch any fish, but cares if you do. And that's the same for all of our activities. I want someone that gets really excited about sharing it. And that means the spirit of a ranger. I'm going to protect you, I'm going to watch out for you, and I'm going to share something with you. So those are really the skill sets I look for. If you want even more precise, always communication. I know we'd all say that as a group and it's a general term, but give us someone that can communicate across all generations, all socioeconomic groups, which is an incredible gift. But I learned, because I'm a bad communicator, how important it is to have those skills across horizontally and vertically my organization.
You know, Scott, I'm going to come back to some of this that you said after we hear from our 2 other esteemed colleagues. You nailed some of it, and I can't wait to come back to an example of this. Tiffany, it's your turn.
When I think about design, I literally just got into capital projects and being able to be a voice at the table, and in regards to finding consultants and people to design. I definitely want people who have experience, people who have a variety of options, people that are community conscious and understand the demographics of the communities that we're serving and the needs. When it comes to staff, I definitely want people who are passionate, people who understand community engagement. This is a people-oriented profession. So you have to have some personality. You have to be able to not take yourself too serious. I think that those community engagement ambassadors are important to the communities that we serve. Definitely want people that reflect the communities that we serve. It's more welcoming for people to visit our spaces when they see people that look like them, and people that can relate to them, people that understand their cultcultures. I think those are my top things that I look for when hiring anybody. I'm spending my money, so I'm going. Well, it's not my money. I'm spending money for a service or a product, and so I'd like for it to reflect the people who are going to use that product or that service.
Absolutely, all the way. Gosh, I can't wait to get to the end to chime in on this. Holly, come in on the conversation.
So very similar to our other 2 colleagues who've spoken, but to go back to the design for a moment, obviously, as I mentioned before, because that's something we've been going through as we renovate a bunch of our parks, but I'm looking for someone out there who can show me those best practices. They can show me what's worked in other communities, what they've found success, whether their cities, counties have had designed out that, you know, kind of really makes the mark and really gets those different populations and different ages to integrate to one another. But when it comes to the qualifications, I'm looking for staff. Very much right there with Scott and Tiffany. I want a people person. I'm looking for somebody with empathy, compassion, and patience, and that truly cares about the people that they serve. And, you know, I think about it like this. I want that person who's smiling when they answer the phone, whether they're the front end person or the supervisor. I want that person that if you're on the other end of the phone, that you can tell that person you're talking to is smiling. Too many times that, you know, and today people, especially our older Americans, the only physical touch or the only conversation they may have are when they leave their homes, and they may only leave their home one day a week. Maybe that's to go to a program at one of our facilities, or it's a walk in the park, or whatever that case may be. You know, if they're widowed and they live alone and have no other family, sometimes that's the only interaction they have. So if that interaction is often with a front desk staff or a person as part of your team, I want them to feel like that they care about them. You know, they're just not a number. They're just not the person who walked in off the street for that program. They're Joe or Amy, and they know them by name, and they know them personally. They know their story. That they have that engagement on a day-to-day, you know, level, or if it's only once a week or once a month. But it's not that they have their head down and they're just doing their job, but they're making a connection. Because I think back to Anne-Marie and to other comments that have been made today as we've gone through COVID these last few years, and, you know, where that's put a lot of people, we've lost a lot of that social interaction that we had on a personal level, not just behind a computer screen like we are today, but on that person-to-person connection. And so obviously, you know, to me, that carries a lot more weight. Like to Scott's point, a lot can be taught. But I can't teach a person to be personable. I can't teach a person to care. That's got to come with you when you come on board. And I've got to know that that's the personality that we have coming with you, because I want our staff to care about the people we care about here in our community.
You know, all three of you. Now, folks, as you know, we do not rehearse these answers. This is all authentic from these professionals, to the point. Just spoke at the Montana Trails Park and Recreation Association and did a keynote. I got to tell you, what came out of that group is just what these professionals are saying. I want that person that's a people person. But the top two that came out too was looking for employees that had passion, could connect, but also were coachable. And I think that really speaks to, think about it, we almost became almost too mechanical at one point and too rigid on some things. I'm so happy to see this come back. I think we've got more heart than we've ever seen in our field right now, more heart. And I think we all really just reanalyzed and got in touch with what's really important today. So I know I'm getting a little bit deep and sensitive, but I think it's important that we talk about these things. And thank you so much for bringing all of this up, all of you, because I just think it's a different day. Yeah, we always look for some of these things, but for those to go up to the top is pretty exciting to see within our field. Anne-Marie, I'm going to turn it back over to you. We've got a couple more poll questions, I believe.
Absolutely. So there is a lot going on right now. Everybody is so busy with so many initiatives. So we would kind of like to know from everybody, and this is a multiple choice question. You can choose your top 3 answers. Which of the following are your top 3 areas of focus as you plan for the future? Is it redesigning common areas and public gathering spots? Is it ensuring adequate recreational activities for vulnerable populations? Youth activities and sports? Creating sustainable sources of revenue? Maybe it's obtaining grant funding, attracting, maintaining a sustainable workforce, food security and hunger prevention, DEI across the whole park system, or something else. This is a hard one, folks, because every single one of these is an important initiative. So we're just trying to see what is everybody's top three as we go through that. So while everybody's voting, and there's a lot of voting going on in here, it's so interesting, you know, what you guys were saying about the type of personality and somebody being personable. And I think especially as we come out of COVID, right? There was a survey a couple of years ago, and this was right before COVID by AARP, with people who were 45 and older, and they found that 35% of the adults that they spoke to reported that they were lonely. So, you know, you just wonder how COVID had affected that. And, you know, another report that Cigna did actually found that people aged 18 to 37 laid claim for being the loneliest, with those between 18 and 22 being significantly more likely than other generations to say they experience loneliness. So it's just really interesting when you think of those surveys that were done by those national organizations. And if there was, you know, that many people feeling lonely, what does that affect now as we're coming out of COVID? And certainly how people in parks, not just peers, but also programmers and people in parks that can, you know, bring those people out and make them feel great is certainly an important thing. All right, we're going to give you about 5 more seconds on this one. The voting is slowing down. It looks like most everybody has voted. So we'll give you the 3, 2, 1, and we will end the poll. And wow, these were all really close. DEI was the most popular, followed very, very closely by attracting and maintaining a sustainable workforce. I mean, that is just so hard right now. Redesigning common areas and public gathering spots was third, and then ensuring adequate recreation activities for vulnerable populations. So great. We are going to, oh, there's the share on that one. And we have one more poll question for you before we go back to the questions. And this is kind of a fun one. We would like to know, for all of you great followers and watchers of Good News in Parks, in regard to future shows, which would you most likely to attend? We have a lot of great things in the works coming on for you. So innovative ideas from people who are maybe change makers today in Park and Rec, honoring community spirit and history, promoting and training from within, inspirational partnerships, or something else. So some fun topics there, all fun topics that we might be exploring, but we're really interested to hear what you guys think on that. So not a lot of choices. You guys are voting pretty quick on this one. We'll give you about 5 more seconds. So if you haven't voted, please do. And we'll end this one in 3, 2, 1. And let's share those results. Well, innovative ideas, that is no surprise. Pretty good voting all the way across the board, but that is by far the most popular. So we will definitely get to work on that topic and the others as well. Looks like those are resonating really well also. So as always, we appreciate your input on the direction for the show. All right, Jody.
All right, God, we're flying by, you guys. We got to get to these questions. Okay, question number 3. These questions that, again, are from our audience. They deal with general administrative areas. How is your staff working? Because we want to know if it's still remotely blended. Is it in person? Where are you all landing? We want to know on your financial reporting, the views on your revenue policy productions, and any change in your agency, the way you look at that pre-pandemic versus today as we continue in public service and offer services during a COVID world. So as we heard today, probably COVID's going to continue, different variances. We may be into another booster. So not to get too deep into that, but we know we're going to live with it. How do you look at all this? Because we do know some people are making some adjustmts on not only remotely in person, but also on revenue budgets, how they're reporting. So please share this. And Tiffany, let's start with you.
Sure, I'll go first. So during COVID, like I said, I've worked for 3 organizations, all geographically different, all with different rules. So I think across the country, it basically depends on where you are. In the city of Seattle just had staff to report back this week in person.
Wow.
All staff are just returning to the office this week. Of course, there are some essential services like emergency shelters and showers where staff continue to report in. So, but for the most part, their staff just reported back this week. In Prince William County, Virginia, they almost did not shut down. And so operations continued around the clock. Here in the city of Tukwila, operations pretty much continued. We pivoted and offered some services that were not traditionally offered. There was a lot of Meals on Wheels, a lot of fitness stuff increased. Golf increased tremendously. In fact, the city averaged around 41,000 tee times previously. Wow. And last year there were more than 64,000 tee times. So there was a huge increase in golf. In terms of revenue generation, some of that here where I work now has been offset with American Rescue Plan funds, which is a grant. So a lot of programs have used that funding to offset some of the costs for the programs. In fact, our summer camps are only $20 a week. That's almost unknown, using excess funding from that. But in terms of revenue generation, I don't think that a lot of organizations have been able to sustain what they have brought in previous years, just because of COVID. Just because of COVID, it means nothing else really to say. So those are the three lenses that I've seen.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that, because again, we are seeing some differences throughout the country, but that's amazing that Seattle's just now coming back to report in, besides their essential services, that and first responders and the department on the front lines. Wow. Holly.
So for us, we've been back almost full capacity since about spring of last year. So quite different than what Tiffany shared. But it was done in a phased approach. So we brought people back full-time. Part-timers had to gradually come back, but full-time came back. During the pandemic, for the most part, we just went very virtual with all programming, a lot of food type programs and a lot of non-traditional things that we may have not done in the past, as what Tiffany spoke of. So very similar in that regard. But moving forward, by now we're pretty much back all in person. So probably about 99%. But here we have the ability that if it's administrative, they can work remotely at the department head's discretion, which is really nice, because if you guys know anything at all and you've worked in municipalities very long, municipalities don't work remote. Only private sector gets to do that kind of thing. So it's been a very nice thing that staff have had that opportunity. I think that helps a lot with morale, to be honest. I think that's been a big, huge positive that otherwise we have never seen in the municipality side. So in the government side, we've just not had that. But for us, that's been a huge kudos to our administration and us being able to offer that. Of course, you know, your mainstream, you know, the parks still have to be cut. You know, when a facility is open, we still have to manage it and things of that nature. But if it's someone who has some flexibility that, you know, I don't need the HR person necessarily to sit in her office if she could do it from a computer. Finance the same way, as long as the bills are getting paid, you know, it doesn't matter where your seat is, honestly. And I think it's great that we have been able to recognize, you know, that ability that people are going to get their jobs done. And it's not about sitting in an office or showing up from 8 to 5 every day so I can see you. It's about, you know, we get the jobs done as we always have. And if that provides a little sanity for some folks to be able to stay home and work safely for various reasons, then I think it's a great opportunity for us. As far as revenue and changes, you know, as far as views on revenue, not a lot has changed for us. We've always been seen as a huge community commodity with not a whole lot of return. And I have a council that isn't real big on, we have to match dollar for dollar for what we spend because we provide community resources that otherwise our community might not have. So I'm very fortunate in that regard that it's not a revenue issue. Obviously, from a department standpoint, we always look at it as a necessity. We want to, you know, return as much money as we can. I mean, that's just being good stewards of city funding and citizen dollars. So we're always looking at the revenue side. How can we make that? But it's not because we're being pressured from our, elected officials. That's more of an internal thing that we want to be respectful, and we want to be good stewards of city dollars. But again, it's not from the revenue standpoint. So for us, that's kind of where we are at this point.
Holly, just do the right thing, right? You've always been that leader that could be depended on, and you have emulated that your career. So thank you for emphasizing that, of just doing the right thing for the citizen and for who you're serving. It's fabulous. Scott, turn it over to you to finish up on this question.
Yeah, let's do the global lens first. As we talk to colleagues from China to Hong Kong, to Sydney, to South Africa, this COVID thing ain't going anywhere, y'all. And it's not going to be a United States thing. We have colleagues now around the globe in parks who are in lockdown because of the wave they're going through. We have colleagues that are just opening up. And my lens and counsel to everyone is look globally, because that's the game we're in. This virus doesn't care about what nation you're in or what state you're in. So while Tennessee, as I'm learning, elected not to participate in the pandemic in a meaningful way, in some respect, they all did
Good
it.
point.
It's not going to stop. So the waves are going to keep coming back. And we need to adapt to that for some time going forward. In terms of revenue, I've been in the private sector, the conservancy world, for the last 12 years, where you eat what you make. And if I can be the futurist maybe of the group, I see some pretty big headwinds coming our way. If the lesson of the past is true, and I think California is always ahead of the rest of the nation, I think we all remember back in the 70s and 80s, if we have enough gray hair, they went through that 1% initiative. And that 1% property tax initiative was in response to increasing property values and property assessments. And as we look at the real estate explosion in the United States right now, if we're a local government that relies on local real estate funds for our operations, we should anticipate pushback on that pretty quickly. Folks' taxes are going to go up substantially because appreciation's going up. And if I'm an agency that relies on a significant portion of property tax for my basis, and my team, I know I've got a couple of team members on the call, I think now's the time to start looking at how much revenue we can generate ourselves and get ahead of the curve in preparation for the anti-tax campaigns that, if recessions hold like they hold and inflation works like it works, will be the next big wave. And to prepare ourselves and our agencies for that as much as possible now.
Scott, I think you're right. We just saw it in a round of elections yesterday, actually the last 2 days, just here in Montana. And we saw that with some school levies and some issues like that. So we do need to brace. We need to be prepared. But that'll be interesting to monitor that across the country with where we're at as a country. But yes, we can learn a lot of lessons internationally from all this. And then just finally, I'd like to just put a final comment and come back to this, is trust. What you've seen too is us as Parks and Recreation professionals working with our staffs over the country. You're hearing about the trust of the blended approach, in person or virtually. Sometimes it's been great, and then sometimes it really has been something of really learning about internally your staffs and everybody's come to the table and make sure you're on task and make sure that you complete everything on time that you're charged with as an employee or a full-time administrator. So it's been a very interesting time that I've heard from other colleagues about that. One thing is learning all about trust and knowing where you sit as an organization. So anyway, thank you all so much. Okay, this new segment has been really helpful. And Michelle, you're one of the best that we've ever had as a leader of a state, or I can say that because I've been in this a long time, of a Park and Recreation Association, and you've been one of the top leaders. We want to know a little bit about you, but share with our audience your background a little bit, but then also get into North Carolina. What are you all doing? You've always been a leader, but what does that mean?
Absolutely. Well, Jody, I've been here enjoying the great conversation from Tiffany, Scott, and Holly, and the insight that they've been bringing and sharing. So thank you all to the panelists. It's been wonderful to sit in with you and be part of this chat today. I am a North Carolina native. I've lived here all my life. I love this state. As Tiffany called us, I am an active older adult. I get that ARP information in my mailbox. I quickly put it right in my recycling bin because I'm not ready to go there yet. I have been at NCRPA for almost 23 years, and I have
Wow.
been the director here for 10 years. And I like to say that I have the best Parks and Recreation job in North Carolina because I get to work with passionate and dedicated professionals and individuals, just like the three that you have on the call here today. So that's kind of a little bit about me. NCRPA, back in 2015, 2016, we went through a restructuring and reorganization. We changed our membership model, which has caused explosive growth. We now have over 5,600 members in North Carolina, which is wonderful. If you measure state associations by different ways, budget, the geographic areas they serve, or the number of members, I think we were probably the largest based on the number of members in our association, which is great. Some things we've been focused on and will continue to focus on is we were very fortunate 3 years ago to receive a grant to focus on diversity, equity, inclusion in our state through Parks and Recreation as frontline community members, and how all of that can impact together. So we've been able to do education, discussions, and have a safe space for conversations, which when we started this, it was not the topic that it became later on as we move forward during the last couple of years. Another thing is online education. The pandemic pushed us all to the virtual world, and it's been good. And so one of the things that we're taking out of this is it's a pandemic positive because the shape of our state is long and narrow, and it takes about 8 or 9 hours to go from the east to the west. And we can't close down Parks and Recreation and everybody come to a conference and event, but everybody deserves to have an opportunity for learning. So how do we offer those online opportunities that can complement our in-person events that people love and enjoy? Because as Park and Recreation professionals, we are people, and we want to be in the same spaces with each other. And when we had our conference last year, we were still under mask mandates in that particular city, but you could see people smiling underneath the mask. They were so happy to be back in space and not in a little Zoom window, to be able to have those conversations and just connect with people and be in their presence. So we're going to look at how do we continue to stay connected with our members all across the state, virtually and in person, as we're bringing those back. And I think one of the most exciting things that has happened here has been the funding for parks in our state. Last year, our General Assembly passed a 2-year budget, and it had over $100 million each year for parks in North Carolina, which is great. Absolutely. $19 million of that or so went into our Parks and Recreation Trust Fund, which has been around for 25 years. It provides matching grants to local governments for park facilities. So that is really exciting. There was also a separate $10 million that was put aside specifically for providing recreational amenities and park and spaces for persons with disabilities and veterans in our state. And so we've got that matching grant program that's going on. And from our standpoint at NCRPA, we are looking to continue that increased funding to remind people how important parks are, not just during a pandemic, but every day, and that they bring value to communities. And our state is growing leaps and bounds, and we need to continue to be able to offer these great spaces for all the people who currently live here and those who are making their home and way to North Carolina. So that's kind of where we are. We just continue that exciting awareness that parks is essential, and don't think about us when you go to start looking somewhere for a budget cut.
That's right. Way to follow up at the end. I'll tell you 2 words: dynamic and exceptional. You have always been that leader. Seen you in action. Thank you so much. I'll tell you, folks, if you're an officer, if you're in a state, go look at North Carolina. They've always been a model for us. And I just want to thank you so much, Michelle. We needed to have you on, and we needed you to share. Thank you.
I'm excited to have been here and appreciate the opportunity so much.
You betcha. All right, let's get to this exciting segment that we love every show. Anne-Marie, it's yours.
Awesome. Well, we call this segment Good News in Parks about great people. And, you know, we have a lot of pretty amazing folks on this panel. And so what we always ask them to do is to just talk about somebody that they work with, have worked with, admire. And so that's what the segment is all about. So Scott, we are going to start with you. Tell us about Bob Corker.
Okay, yeah, because then I put Dolly up, because you know, if you can't go wrong if you put Dolly up, everyone, we all love Dolly.
Excellent.
I'm going to look back though a little bit on Chattanooga's history, and I share this quite intentionally with y'all. Look, we live in an era where it feels like two political parties can't get along together. We got people protesting the street one way or the other. I think Bob Corker, a Republican, is a good moment for us to pause and reflect on the fact that parks are one of those last places where the R's and D's can generally agree. And if we do our job right and we pitch what we do right and we deliver on what we do right, I think we're still a really great safe space where folks like Senator Corker, who before he was senator was the mayor here in Chattanooga and rebuilt this whole city around the outdoors and parks, want to work together across aisles. Aisles, in fact, vanish. And I think it's worth remembering that as parks folks, is we not only have a mission to deliver what we do, I would argue that in today's climate, we have a mission to remind people they can come together. And they have more that brings them together than keeps them apart. And this image of Dolly and Bob, I think, probably ran it home to me better than anything else.
Awesome. Absolutely. That's very, very wise words. All right. Holly, tell us about Becky.
So Becky is my deputy director here in Columbus, and I wanted to talk about her because Becky's been with our department for 28 years. As Jody mentioned early on in the segment today, I have a somewhat busy schedule this year. I think the times that I've had the opportunity to talk to Jody, I've been on the road or somewhere out of town. So I've spent most of my year this year traveling, and it's been good travel, don't get me wrong. But huge kudos. Our executive director for Georgia Recreation Parks has joined us today. That's Steve Card. So I noticed his name a little earlier. But Steve has kept me really busy this year. And as a result, I've needed someone at the helm to be back home to run our department. And that's Becky. Like I said, she's been with the department 28 years. There's not one area or division of our department that she has not run. So anytime anything over the last 28 years has happened in the department, if there's been a need to send someone, you lost a division manager, you lost someone in a certain area, and you needed someone to run it, she's that person. She's always been that person to go and fight the fires and to put things out. You know, we always talk about, you know, your right-hand person, who is that and how do they operate? Well, she's not just my right-hand person. She's most of the time my left hand, my right hand, and a lot of times my brain, and to keep me straight and keep me where I'm supposed to be. So just huge kudos and thank you to her. She does a phenomenal job here in our department and not just here in the city of Columbus, but she's also equally involved in our state association and really loves to connect and loves what she does. But again, didn't know how much I knew about her until she and I started working together very closely in 2015. Cute little story or short little story. We all of a sudden inherited an natatorium that had been run by a third party. Both of us were kind of forced over there because we inherited it and didn't have any staff. So when we got it, both of us were sent over there. She is the finance manager at the time and me as an assistant director. Never had we worked together. But when you're thrown into that kind of atmosphere, you learn very quickly how you depend on another person. And so when I moved up and became the director of the department, it was a very easy choice for me at that point to move her up with me because she was someone I knew I could trust. She's hardworking, has the best ethics of any employee I've ever met. So just a huge thank you to her for what she does for our department, because I know I could not do the things I do without having her.
That's awesome. Everybody needs a Becky.
Yes.
Fantastic. All right, Tiffany, tell us about Tracy.
So Tracy is the Parks and Recreation Director here in the city of Tukwila. Fairly new in the role since 2021. Most impressive is accepting a leadership position at that capacity during COVID and having to pivot all of the services that you have been providing for the last 20 plus years of your career. She's been working with the city of Tukwila Parks and Recreation since the early 1990s, is a Washington State alumni. I think they're Cougars or something like that. She has a bachelor's in recreation and leisure studies and a master's in recreation administration, has worked at, much like you just said, Holly, has worked in many different capacities for the city Parks and Recreation Department and is doing some amazing things. We're currently in a different kind of restructure, and that's kind of how I got to Tukwila. And she has so much innovation, so much passion, and just so much energy for the community and for the team that she serves. I think that it's extremely important when you work at different levels to kind of never forget where you started. And Tracy is one of those people who has so much empathy and passion for not only the profession, but for the team that she's charged with leading.
Oh, that's amazing. Awesome. Thank you all for sharing so much. All right. So now, let's see. First of all, do we have any questions? Looks like we may have one. Diane just said, great point, Michelle. COVID brought much awareness to the positive opportunities for parks. Funding is following finally. That is so true. It is wonderful to see the funding that is now starting to come into the Parks and Recreation arena. Well-deserved and long overdue. All right, we want to, just before we end here, we want to share just a couple of resources with you. So let me get that up here. First of all, remember we have that prize package for the person who refers the most new viewers. So don't forget about that. We've got some great shows coming up for you. Register at education.playcore.com. As always, we keep all the older episodes at youtube.com/playcorenews. Great reference. We call the show Good News in Parks for a reason. They're super inspirational. I go watch the old shows. I close my eyes when I'm on because quite literally I can't stand it, but I love to listen to hear all the things that everybody says. So don't forget about those as well. And we wanted to share a couple of resources with you. We mentioned on the last show, the Land and Water Conservation Fund Resource Hub that lives at playcore.com/LWCF. This is a great place to go to get tips. Just that frequently asked questions part in the middle there has a lot of information about the basic questions if you've never applied for Land and Water Conservation Fund. And let's face it, there are so many things that you can pay for with that fund. That is a fabulous opportunity. So go there. We are working with the folks at Nasorlo to add more resources to this all the time. So if your only exposure to trying to learn how to get Land and Water Conservation Fund is that like 15,000 page manual that starts out back in 1964, you don't have to read all of that. We're trying to break it down into manageable bite-sized pieces. So do take a look at that. We're also hosting with the team at Nasorlo a 3-part webinar series on land and water conservation. There is still one live one left on May 12th. You can also register for that at education.playcore.com. We will be making the 2 that have already happened available. So feel free to check those out. And then finally, this new resource called Transformational Impact, which is all about designing public spaces to promote intergenerational play and recreation. You can find that. We've got the URL for it there. Lots of great case studies about parks that have done a tremendous job with this, as well as some fun programming ideas that you can do between older and younger generations to get them to interact and work together. So some really fun opportunities there. And then finally, our next show will be about cybersecurity and safety training and programming. And this is one that you guys have asked about in the studio audience, and it is a great topic. There are so many crazy scams out there now that you think you're super web savvy, and then boy, those phishing scams and those people are getting really tricky with some of that stuff. So just a great opportunity to listen to some of your colleagues that have experience with this and have put programs in place. So we're super excited. As always, you can sign up for all the seasons series at education.playcore.com. So we look forward to seeing you on June 16th. And Jody, I am gonna leave it to you. Any parting thoughts?
Well, one thing, give me a couple of words from your wisdom, every one of you, including Michelle. If tomorrow you wanted to lead our country in Parks and Recreation, what would be your focus if tomorrow you were in charge? Tiffany, I'm putting you on. You're the young one. If you were in charge in our country, what would that trend be?
Ooh. I'm going to use a motto actually, and it's my favorite one. Be the change.
Be the change. Absolutely.
Be the change. I think, yes, we are in a different era. I think it's important for us to stay current with the use of technology, but not missing out on that interpersonal piece. So if I were in charge, I probably would have QR scan codes on every trail to give you some history about the trail. Yeah, I'd innovate technology into everything that we do.
Be the change. Scott?
I'm easy. Get the land.
Yes.
Get the land now. The vultures are circling and they're not going to wait for good intentions. Get it and set it aside. City, county, rural, get it.
Get the land. Great. Holly?
Mine's going to be very simplistic. And mine's about inclusiveness and empathy, but be kind to everyone. That's not something that costs you anything. It's something you can do very easily, but remember to be kind to everyone. I think nowadays, with all that has transpired in the last few years, we talked a lot about care and concern and compassion and patience today about people. But I think it's be kind to everyone because you don't know what they're dealing with at home, whether it be mental issues or family or whatever it might be. We don't know what's happening behind the curtain. And so just remember to be kind to everyone because, hey, it becomes a ripple effect. It's like a wave. And we want to be that wave to carry us across the country.
Be kind. You never know what's behind the curtain. I love that. Michelle?
I think I will go with the answer is Parks and Recreation, because I think Parks and Recreation is the answer to most of the things that the challenges that communities face. And I think it's the things that bring us together. And so we need to be at the forefront and say, here we are, and we are doing that. But I want everybody to just step up and recognize that the important role that they play and never forget the impact you're having.
Wow. Thank you. Anne-Marie, you want to make a comment? You want a shot?
Sure, why not? Well, I knew this. You do this to me all the time. I knew you were going to do this. Honestly, it's really an easy answer for me. It would be equitable spaces. There's great parks in some areas and there's no parks in other areas. And I think that it's everybody's responsibility, whether you're in the industry or not, to get vocal about that and try to figure out how to bring equitable opportunities for parks and recreation to all people so everybody has access.
Love it. Well, I just say to all of you, it takes us all. To me, it takes us all. I know that's a global statement, but it does. We all have something to bring to the table, but it's for us and by us. And that's why we do the show. So thank you all, sheroes, heroes of our field. Thank you for your heart, soul, and passion for joining us. Back to you, Anne-Marie.
Absolutely. I just echo that. Thank you. I know everybody is so busy. So to everybody in our audience that was here today, to all our amazing panelists, Michelle as our special guest, thank you all so much for taking the time to share your wisdom and your knowledge and your passion with everybody. It's what makes this show and we couldn't do it without you. So thank you very much. And we will see you guys next time. Have a great day.
Have a great day. Thanks for having us.
Have a good one. Thanks for having us.
Bye, guys.
Bye.